Now that war has finally come to the Tempest Federation once again, and with the recent episode 8 of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime Season 3, we see the Holy Knights are still engaging with Shion's Yomigaeri along with Rimuru finally facing off against Hinata Sakaguchi. However, there are some details and conversation regarding the various fights that were unfortunately removed from the episode, so I'll be discussing about those in today's video as well as providing some insight on the sequences we see in the anime. As usual, a spoiler warning for anyone that hasn't watched the episode yet or might find the cut content information I mentioned to be spoilers. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. Now then, episode 8 is titled Barking Up the Wrong Tree, and the name is actually referring to how both Rimuru along with Hinata have completely misunderstood the intentions of one another, which led to this conflict in the first place. And the episode will be adapting from Chapter 5 Saints and Monsters Collide of the Volume 7 light novel, which goes over Leonard's fight with Shion and Rimuru's fight with Hinata respectively, while also providing some world building details as well. With that said, rather than jumping between the perspective of Rimuru and Shion's fights like the anime, I'll be discussing about their fights separately from the beginning to end, so we will first start with Shion's fight, which takes place directly after episode 7 as she arrives to confront Leonard's group. However, in the light novel, the Holy Knights will immediately activate their elemental armaments once they sense how dangerous Shion was, which wasn't even shown in the anime. So to explain, the elemental armament is a recreation and lesser version of the original holy armaments once used by the chosen hero that sealed Valdora in the past, which Hinata does showcase later in the episode. Furthermore, when activated, Holy Knights will be able to surpass their physical limits and allows them to unlock the full potential of their respective elementals, along with enhancing their weapons with powers specialized in destroying magical-based life forms such as monsters. But the large consumption of mana makes it difficult to sustain for long. Having explained that, the following sequence of Leonard ordering the 4 Holy Knights behind him to activate Holy Field will occur in a similar fashion to the light novel, but the anime doesn't explicitly explain that it was a simplified version of the spell, meaning it has less range and the draining effect of monsters were weaker as well. This was the reason why the Holy Knights were stalling so that Shion would get weakened by the barrier. At the same time, Leonard was observing Shion and his assessment about her being a fair Oni, then being corrected by her to be a wicked Oni, along with her explanation on the differences in the anime does play out the same as the light novel, but the reason Leonard was angered by Shion's existence was slightly different. In the light novel, he found the idea of Shion being similar to an earth deity and could be worshipped as a local god to be disrespectful towards their goddess Luminous, whereas in the anime, being a wicked Oni meant that her evil nature is a blasphemy to their religion. And this will be the trigger that causes Leonard along with the other Holy Knights to fire a Holy Cannon at Shion, but the sequence of her deflecting the attack in the anime does follow the light novel. And again, a more detailed explanation of Holy Cannon was removed from the episode. Basically, Holy Cannon is an offensive spell that breaks down the body of a monster by destroying their magicals, but against a normal human, at most it will only knock them down. That's why the Holy Knights were not actually injured in the anime. Also, Shion will reveal in the light novel that she apparently chose to be trapped inside the Holy Field because Rimuru had ordered her to spare the Holy Knights, and she thought breaking their spirits by showing off her overwhelming strength would be the easiest way to force them to surrender without killing them. It was for this reason that Shion was being so lenient towards them. Nonetheless, it was pretty funny that Shion offered to cook them a meal for surrendering. I think that's a punishment rather than a reward, and it might even reignite the conflict. Jokes aside, Leonard declines her offer to surrender, and he was actually impressed by Shion's swordsmanship in the light novel, even pointing out how her Odachi has 0 damage even though Holy Cannon is capable of destroying magic weapons. And because they still refused to surrender, Shion decided to show them a bit more of her strength, and before she injured Guard for not listening to a proposal, there was another sequence of her doing the same move in the light novel, and it was against one of the Holy Knights, namely she would destroy his shield with a pebble, which mind you, it was a light construct manifested from the elemental armaments, so it's not a typical metal or wooden shield, making the feat much more impressive, and it even shocked all the Holy Knights. But I digress. Leonard quickly changes his tone in the anime after seeing how Shion could have easily killed everyone within the barrier if she wanted to, and she suggested for them to attack her with all their might, so the preceding sequence of her nullifying their combined attacks will pretty much follow the light novel. And I love how they implemented the visual representation for Shion's skills, while conveying to us how she was able to defy and tamper with the laws of the world without relying on exposition. Anyways, after their failed attack, the Holy Knights were demoralized but Guard was still behaving in a hostile manner, and Leonard's opinions about him becoming a completely different person does actually have some minor foreshadowing for the upcoming episodes. That said, Shion dealt the final blow to the confidence of the Holy Knights by destroying the Holy Field, and they will immediately surrender following this. Also, it was a good creative choice for the anime to have landed being the one that provides exposition about Shion's desired outcome, making their surrender more realistic as they realize how overpowered she was. On a side note, Shion's unique skill cook was so broken that Wisdom King Raphael had to prevent her from evolving the skill into the ultimate level, because it was one of the few skills available that could actually kill Rimuru. So to continue, after the Holy Knight surrendered, Leonard, realizing his mistakes of being the one who ruined the negotiation and that he has been manipulated by the 7 Celestial Sages happened exactly as the light novel, but his point about being blinded by his hatred for Demon Lord Valentine, who has caused so much suffering to his friends and family in the past, and causing him to even suspect Hinata for betraying them, wasn't included in the anime. That's why Leonard wanted to explain everything to Rimuru in the anime, but seeing that he was still fighting Hinata, Leonard could only lament about his actions and observe the battle. Moving on, in regards to the fight between Rimuru and Hinata, their initial conversation in the anime with Rimuru requesting for Hinata to recall her troops would follow the light novel, and later when Anna rudely interrupted Rimuru, Benimaru briefly exchanged blows with him, but they soon left as they avoid interfering with their fight, and the others would follow suit. The two biscuiteers left with Fritz and Bacchus, while Litters would take on Sower. That said, Hinata and Rimuru started to fight, but when she tried to use her unique skill Usurper, it gave the status of hindrance, which allowed her to conclude that Rimuru was now at least the same level as Luminous, since this also happened when Hinata used the skill on her. And in the light novel, Hinata mentioned when she first fought Rimuru in the previous season, he wasn't even strong enough to meet the conditions for Usurper, and yet he now has already surpassed her in overall power level. That's why Hinata decided to get serious in the anime and discard the Dragon Buster to bring out Moonlight, a legendary great weapon gifted to her by Luminous, which wasn't mentioned in the episode. Hinata also activated her Holy Armament, and this has all the effects of the elemental armaments I mentioned just now, but far stronger, although there is still a time limit on the armor. In addition to that, the armor will increase her capabilities to the level of a saint, making her at least on par with a true Demon Lord, and it was for this reason that she could even keep up with Rimuru in the anime, and I saw how people were complaining about Rimuru being weak, completely ignoring the fact that Hinata has 10 years of training and combat experience against monsters, while also being a more skilled swordsman as compared to Rimuru, who even stated in a light novel that he was lucky to have awakened as a true Demon Lord and have help from Wisdom King Raphael, otherwise he would have already lost to Hinata. Regardless, not much can be said about the fight other than the choreography being animated quite well with how fluid and dynamic their movements were. However, in the middle of the fight, Hinata briefly recalls her time with Shizu, and the anime will leave out the portion about Hinata's backstory from the light novel. Essentially, Hinata remembers that despite only spending a month with Shizu, it was enough for Hinata to finally open her heart to someone for the very first time, but she was afraid of being rejected and hated by Shizu, so she would distance herself from Shizu once she managed to learn everything from her. And the light novel will provide some further details on the reason behind Hinata's insecurities. To explain, before coming to the Tensura world, Hinata's father started to become violent towards her mother and she could no longer stand the sight of her mother being abused, so she decided to kill him, making it look like an accident. However, this only broke her mother's heart and her mother resorted to immersing herself in religion, choosing to completely neglect Hinata. This caused Hinata to think that her own mother hated her and became the catalyst that caused her to believe that the world was full of misfortune, so she wanted to create one where everyone can live happily in peace, which explains why Hinata chose to serve Luminous since their motives align. Nonetheless, Hinata was relieved that her mother can finally live in peace when she was transported to the Tensura world, and she could focus on achieving her idealized world. Hinata became more ruthless and colder towards people until she met Shizu, but like I said, her self-hate caused her to believe that Shizu would eventually abandon her just like her own mother. And honestly, it was unfortunate the episode left out Hinata's backstory because it would have provided some much needed context to her personality and behavior in anime. Viewers might even learn to sympathize with her rather than hating on the character if they knew more about her story, but I'm hoping they'll include it in the upcoming episodes. In any case, going back to the present, Hinata's fight with Rimuru will continue and there were some internalized thoughts from her that were removed from the anime. For instance, Hinata was frustrated that despite spending 10 years to master her swordsmanship, Rimuru was still able to easily counter them and how the holy armament was starting to take its toll on her body, so she activates predictive calculation and her unique skill mathematician to not only enhance her senses but to predict Rimuru's movements as well, because she was planning on forcing him into admitting defeat by using her attack speed to overwhelm him. Then switching to Rimuru's perspective, he was getting worried about Hinata's sudden increase in speed, and much of what he was thinking at the time in the anime was the same as the light novel. And the visual representation of Raphael explaining the dangers of Hinata's sword was a cute detail. Furthermore, Rimuru unlocking the skill Predict Future Attack would also play out the same as the light novel, and with this, he easily saw through and countered all of Hinata's attacks. When Hinata realized that she could no longer win against Rimuru and seeing the Holy Knights have all lost, the preceding sequence of her making a proposal to end the battle will occur in a similar fashion to the light novel. Also, on a side note, in the light novel, Rimuru noticed that Littles was looking at Soe like she was in love, so he was extremely confused by it, but basically, she ended up being tied up by Soe, and I'm guessing it awakened some kind of masochist fetish inside of her, and it was honestly sad that anime did not show what happened because it would have been quite funny. Having said that, Rimuru accepted the proposal, so when Hinata released Melt Slash, it was funny how Wisdom King Raphael sounded worried and was panicking about the attack, when in reality, she's just doing a bit of trolling because Rimuru was never in any real danger. Even the part where she suggested that Rimuru sacrifice his ultimate skill Beelzebub to block the attack was a lie. But I digress. The detail of everyone struggling to stand properly against the shockwave from the attack and contrasted by Shion just standing there smiling was so funny. And the following interaction that both Hinata and Rimuru had after the attack was quite wholesome. But it wasn't a happy ending as the episode ends with Hinata saving Rimuru from getting blasted by the Dragon Buster, and she'll be cosplaying Ace from One Piece. Now, before I end the video, I wanted to briefly discuss about the beginning scene involving Luminous's Yuri moment because the light novel will add some context to the scene. To explain, the coffin-like item is actually called the Holy Ark, a container that houses the chosen hero, and because it was protected by pure holy energy, it was extremely poisonous to Luminous, but she doesn't mind since the pain brought her the utmost joy. But then Luminous will be interrupted by Louis, just like we see in the anime, who came to report about Hinata's mission to Tempest and the involvement of the 7 Celestial Sages. Again, the light novel has some additional context regarding this sequence, and it was mainly about how Gunther along with Louis and the deceased Roy were known as the 3 Counts of Luminous, and that each of them have their own assigned roles. Gunther governs the vampire city of Night Garden, Louis is the Holy Emperor responsible for the Holy Empire Lubelius, and Roy used to serve as the Demon Lord in Luminous's place. It also explains how they dislike when someone interferes with their respective field of duty, and why Gunther was mad at Louis in the anime for interrupting Luminous's horny session with the Holy Ark, because he was essentially intruding on Gunther's domain. But anyways, the rest of the conversation pretty much followed the light novel with Luminous being annoyed at their bickering, and after scolding them, she orders them to follow her.
これで決めるメルトスラッシュ国防御不能回避不能アルティメットスキルベルゼビュート
Anyways, that's my breakdown on episode 8, and there were not a lot of changes made aside from a few character and world building details that were taken out. Overall, it was a great episode with some nice animation and character moments. My favorite was definitely seeing Shion kick some ass because that entire sequence was absolutely well done. But what about you guys? What are some of your favorite moments on the episode and your thoughts as well? Feel free to share your opinions and comments down below. Also, if you enjoyed this cut content video, remember to leave a like, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification button for more cut content videos as well. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.